Hey, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, Jolly by Nature, and we are here today bringing you our draft recap, our draft breakdown for your world champion, Naptown Ninjasks, in the Blastburn Radio Community Draft League. We are the defending champions in this league. We are also the defending champions in the United Podcasters Pokemon League, kind of our sister league, if you will. And some folks who participated in UPPL Season 1 are also here participating in Season 2 of the Blastburn League. So that is super duper exciting. Everybody is going to be gunning for your boy Jolly, and we are here looking to fight him off and defend our title successfully, hopefully. We're aiming for the top. We're aiming for number one, 16-0. Probably not going to happen, but we are going to do our absolute best every single match to bring home that big W and do you guys out there in the Blastburn Nation super duper proud. Now, you might be a little surprised if you don't follow what we're up to super duper closely, because we said pretty firmly at the end of the last one that we wouldn't be doing another draft until after the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield. If you have a calendar, you might notice that we're about 2 months off from that date and be going, what the hell, Jolly? Ultimately, we changed our minds for a number of reasons, but primarily the big reason is that we were made aware by Game Freak that Pokemon Sword and Shield are not going to have all of the Pokemon available, which shakes up the competitive metagame significantly, and I think overall will be a good change for competitive, but it does mean that there are a lot of really cool Pokemon that are not going to make the jump. So if we want to play with them in a meta where they're current and relevant, that's now. Now is the time. Sword and Shield is the time. Not Sword and Shield, Sun and Moon. The ones we have right now. Sun and Moon is the time to play with those boys. And so we decided to send Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, send Generation 7 out with a bang, and do one more draft. So here we are. We are excited. We are rootin' tootin' ready for shooting. We're going to do our very best. So before we get into talking about the team that we've drafted, I do want to talk a little bit about the league itself. So this draft was huge. This league is enormous, easily the biggest that I have ever participated in, let alone organized. We wound up with a total of 32 teams signing up. And because we had exactly 32 teams, we looked at that and we said, well, there's another competitive organization that we're all familiar with that runs 32 teams and does real well. And so we modeled our league format this season off of the NFL format. This meant a couple of things. As it pertains to the draft, we actually split our league into two conferences, the Sun Conference and the Moon Conference, and those two conferences drafted separately, which means that Pokemon that I drafted in Sun Conference were in Sun, could have been drafted by another team over in Moon, and frequently were. There is interconference play. We do play 4 of our matches this season against teams in the Moon Conference, and that means that we might play against Pokemon that we have on our team or Pokemon that we've already faced elsewhere within our own conference. We're also split, each conference is split into 4 divisions of 4 teams each, and you play each of the 3 other teams in your division twice. You're also competing directly within your division for a division championship, which guarantees a playoff spot. So there are 3 other teams that share our division that we are competing with more directly than anyone else, and so that creates a really exciting dynamic with your division rivals, and we'll talk about them later in the video. This draft was a snake-style draft, just like our last one, which means that, everyone is assigned a draft order from 1 to 16. Round 1 goes in that order from 1 to 16, and then round 2 reverses it, goes from 16 to 1, and so on and so forth until the draft is complete. So drafting really early is great in the first round, but it means that you pick really late in the second round, and vice versa. There were a total of 11 rounds to this draft. There were 12 in our last draft, you might remember, and the reason for that drop is because this time around we are not drafting Z crystals. This is an open Z format, which means any Pokemon except for our Mega can hold any Z crystal we would like any given week, which makes things really exciting and dynamic. There are, just like in the last draft, there are 5 tiers of Pokemon ranked by letter grade, A, B, C, D, and E. Megas are in their own separate category and are ranked by letter grade A, B, or C based on their perceived value. So with your 11 picks, you get 1 Mega, you get 1 Pokemon each in tiers A, B, D, and E, so that's 5 of your 11 Pokemon right there. 2 in C, that's 7. The other 4 are what we call free picks, and you get a budget of 400 points to draft 4 additional Pokemon. That budget is altered by what Mega you choose. If you choose an A tier Mega, you actually lose 40 points out of that free pick budget. If you draft a C tier Mega, you actually get an additional 40 points into that budget, so you can draft some higher tier stuff. You can afford better Pokemon elsewhere in your draft. And of course, each of the tiers is assigned a point value, and that's kind of how that all shakes out. Yeah, that's kind of how the draft works. Now, I drafted 8th this time in the draft, so dead center in the Sun Conference draft, which is honestly, in my opinion, that's about the worst place to draft. I think I really dislike being in the middle, because if you're at either of the ends, your picks kind of come in pairs. They come, either 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, or you do 1 and then you wait a while, and then you do 2 and 3, 4 and 5. And that lets you make sure that you're picking things with good synergy that work well together. Whereas when you're dead center, there's a lot of picks between all of your picks. And so that can be a little bit more stressful, can make it harder to build a cohesive team. I feel like we did a really good job of playing around that and still building something that works well together. But I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't feel handicapped at times. So let's go ahead and jump into our draft. So I had a couple of goals coming into this draft. I wanted to make sure that we used some things that I just really wanted to use that I haven't had a chance to really use in draft or competitively in the past, that I think are really good and fun and interesting options. I also wanted to build a team that was very, very different from our Blastburn Radio Draft Season 1 team or from our UPPL Season 1 team. In both of those, we leaned very heavily into fighting type, very offensive Megas. And I wanted to make sure that we did something different this time. And so we did. I came in with a plan. We executed it on it, I think, pretty well. We got most of the things that we wanted coming in. There's one big asterisk on that, one big bullet where we failed to execute our draft, but I think we pivoted really well and we built a really strong and threatening team. Now, our number 1 pick, our first pick, is not a Pokemon that we built the team around, but it's one that very quickly asserted itself when we were kind of putting our board together, that this makes sense and will be fun to use. And of our whole board, it was the thing that I was the most concerned would be drafted before our second pick. So we took it number 1 overall, or number 1 on our team, number 8 overall, and that is Jawsome the Garchomp. I like this pick a lot. There are a number of reasons that we went with Chomp and that we took Chomp with our number 1 pick. Obviously, it's an extremely powerful both ground and dragon type. That's a great type combination. 2 great tastes taste great together. And Garchomp is an absolute monster. For a sense of scale, Garchomp has 130 base physical attack, which is fucking bananas, and then 80 base special attack on top of that, which obviously is significantly lower than 130 physical attack, but is still respectable enough that you can run special coverage and you're not necessarily hamstringing yourself, which is really, really good. 95 base physical defense, which is very respectable, 108 base HP, and 102 base speed, which is a really, really important speed tier. Most everyone knows and understands that Mega Garchomp is just worse than regular Garchomp, but a lot of people don't really understand why. They understand that, well, that's common knowledge, but they don't really look into why, and that speed tier is really the big reason. Mega Garchomp loses 10 points of speed upon Mega Evolution, and 102 is a really, really powerful speed tier. It's not true fast, right? It's not really fast. It's not going to be keeping up with the likes of Mega Alakazam anytime soon, but it does outspeed everything at base 100, which is a lot of shit. Base 100 is probably the most crowded speed tier in Pokemon, and Garchomp outspeeds all of those things. It outspeeds things as diverse as Mew and the other Pixies. It outspeeds Mega Charizard X before a Dragon Dance. It outspeeds Mega Medicham. Really, really valuable speed tier. Now, you might be asking yourself, Jolly, you picked number 8, and you took a ground and dragon type, and you took Garchomp. Zygarde 50% was there on the board, looking you in the eye, and you took Garchomp. Why did you take Garchomp, Jolly? Why Jossum? Well, it's two reasons there. Really three. Three reasons there, really. Number one, I've used Zygarde 50%. And one of my goals coming into this draft was to not repeat any, ideally, or if I have to not repeat many picks. I've used Zygarde. Zygarde was great. It's time for something new. Number two, Garchomp gets Stealth Rocks, which Zygarde does not. And like, while that's not like a damning flaw for Zygarde, it was a factor. Like, I like having the option of a Stealth Rocker out of this particular pickup. And then number three, Garchomp's coverage is fucking bananas, you guys. Especially when you compare it to something like our boy, like Zygarde. Zygarde has almost nothing for coverage. It has its own utility, right? It has things like Glare, Coil, Dragon Dance. Like, it can do shit. But coverage, nothing. Garchomp, meanwhile, has fire coverage on the physical and special sides with Fire Fang and Fire Blast. It has Crunch for Dark type coverage. Has fucking Poison Jab. Has Shadow Claw. Has Stone Edge. Has Iron Head. Has fucking Surf if I want to run it. Like, Chomp can hit so many things super effectively, and can surprise them. And, you know, that's not really... This is going to be a recurring theme in my draft. Like, this isn't something that goes into play a whole lot in OU play, right? Because in OU play, you have no idea what any given opponent's going to bring. You're going to bring your best four moves and just trust the team that you've built to be good enough to beat it. That's not necessarily true in draft. In draft, I know what my opponent can bring, and so having a vast pool of valuable and good coverage options is a genuinely good thing, because if I'm up against someone with a Tapu Bulu, I can outspeed it and kill it with Poison Jab. If I'm up against somebody with... God, fuck, what would I ever run Surf on a Garchomp for? Somebody with a Rhyperior, for instance, and I'm like, man, I need to hit that. Maybe I decide to run Surf that week for the quad effective. You know, there are so many options, and it allows Garchomp to be surprising and dynamic in a way that Zygarde can never be. And so for those reasons, we were really, really excited to add Jossum to the squad, to build our squad with Jossum as kind of that anchor point, that focal point. Again, he wasn't the first Pokemon on the board when we were putting the board together, but we definitely knew we wanted to pick him first, and we're really happy that we got him. Now with our number 2 pick, we actually dipped down a tier. We didn't go for our Mega, we didn't go for another A, we went down into the B tier for pick number 2, and we picked up Jareth, our Sylveon, number 23 overall. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Jolly, that's a little bit high to pick up a B tier, isn't it? And, I mean, yes and no. Like, we saw B tiers go in the first round, actually, depending on what they were, but neither here nor there. We knew that we wanted to attack Sylveon really, really early because it's a very high-profile Pokemon, and we really, really wanted to secure it. It wouldn't have been the worst if we had failed to secure Sylveon. I mean, Sylveon is... Let's talk about what Sylveon is, first of all. Sylveon's a mono fairy type with a phenomenal ability in Pixelate and a good situational ability in Cute Charm. Sylveon is a bulky powerhouse of a Pokemon with 95 base HP and 130 base special defense. And this is important, there are a number of like bulky clericking fairies in the B and C tiers. Sylveon is actually very offensively threatening with 110 base special attack, and again that Pixelate boosting its normal converted to fairy moves, like Hyper Voice obviously being the big high profile one there. Sylveon is, when you compare it directly to things like Florges, Sylveon is has a lot more offensive presence, is a lot harder to just treat as a passive option, which is really, really valuable. Sylveon doesn't get much in the way of coverage, but gets a ton of utility, including dual screens. It gets both light screen and reflect. It gets Wish, gets Heal Bell. Beautiful. Mwah. And perhaps most importantly in this league format, Sylveon gets Baton Pass. We allowed Baton Pass specifically in this draft, and Sylveon can pass, which gives Sylveon like a whole nother level on top of its contemporaries, on top of the other bulky fairy clerics, because I can set up a Protect and then I can Wish and then Baton Pass it away. I can set up Calm Mind and Baton Pass it away. I can just Wish and then Baton Pass to get a slow turn off. Like, I can do so many things with that one move that I would not be able to do in a format where it's illegal. And that really kicked Sylveon up to the next level for me and made me say, okay, I want to use this Pokemon. It does have some like useful coverage. It gets Shadow Ball, obviously it gets Hidden Power. Everything does. And then there are some like useful like meme and shenanigan sets that we can bring on Sylveon. With Sylveon having access to Pixelate. Like, we can run a Curse or a Workup set for setup. We can run Sylveon like... Well, we can run it with like Hyper Beam if we want to meme real hard. We can also run it physical. We can run physical Sylveon with like Z-Dig and like Pixelate Last Resort. Like, there are some really, really cool things that Sylveon is capable of doing, and I'm really looking forward to exploring those things as the season goes on. But overall, I feel like we got really, really good value out of Sylveon as our number 2 overall pick. Number 23 overall, number 2 on the team. Words and things. So we were doing really, really good. We had our number 1 and our number 2 locked up. We had not yet been sniped. And I had a really hard decision to make at our number 3 overall pick. There is another A on our board. It's not an A tier pick that is like commonly thirsted after. But on the way back up, so in round 3, Penguin Mage was going to pick after me in round 3. So she was going to pick her 3 and 4 before I got my 4. And the next mon on our board, while overall I wasn't super worried about having it sniped, I know that Penguin in particular loves it. And so I was more than a little bit concerned that she was going to pick it up. And so for that reason, I adjusted my plans and I took our next friend a little bit higher than I originally intended to. And that friend is Starchild, our Jirachi. So our second A tier pick on the draft, completing our fantasy core, our Dragon Fairy Steel core. In my opinion, this is like one of the best, like one of the ideal fantasy cores in all of draft. Just given the versatility and power of these 3 particular Pokemon. But at number 38 overall, we picked up Jirachi. Jirachi, of course, being a Pixie, a base 100 Mythic Pokemon, Steel and Psychic with the ability Serene Grace. And this is another one of those Pokemon that has a really clearly defined niche in like standard competitive play. It has Stealth Rocks, it has U-Turn, it has Iron Head and Zen Headbutt with Serene Grace to increase flinches, and that's generally what you see Jirachi do. Jirachi's going to usually run Scarf in OU. It'll have maybe Rocks, maybe Healing Wish, definitely U-Turn, definitely Iron Head all the time. And that's just what it does. As it goes real fast, it fishes for flinches, and then when it's almost dead, it Healing Wishes out and something else comes back. And those are all really valid options in this format. Like, I can do all of those things in drafts, but I can do so much more with Jirachi in a draft format. Serene Grace is an incredible ability. You know, you see a lot of these OU Pokemon, like Superior being a great example. Superior is a great Pokemon with a phenomenal ability in Contrary. What does Superior use Contrary for? I mean, it can use it to deter and punish sticky webs, But primarily, almost exclusively, Superior uses Contrary for Leaf Storm. Set Contrary on Team Builder, click Leaf Storm, profit. Serene Grace is not like that. Serene Grace does so much on this Pokemon. Yes, it helps Zen Headbutt and Iron Head to flinch. It also, just off the top, it drastically increases the percentage odds for a Spadef drop from Psychic, giving Jirachi an almost pseudo metronome when using Psychic, because it's going to get those Spadef drops much, much more often and make it harder for things to just recover through Psychic spam. Jirachi also gets access to Thunderbolt and Thunder. Thunder has a base 30% chance for paralysis, which with Serene Grace goes up to, I believe, 60. I believe it's doubled, but it's bananas. It's bananas. It's going to paralyze more often than not, and that is gross. Again, Shadow Ball also sees an increase in its chance to drop Spadef, which is very good, as does Energy Ball, which is also coverage that this monster has access to, as does Flash Cannon. So Spadef drops literally all the way around. Jirachi gets access to all of the elemental punches, which means increased chance of paralysis or burn or freeze off of those moves. Jirachi gets access to Water Pulse, which means an increased chance to confuse off of Water Pulse. It is fucking bananas. The breadth of the coverage that this Mon gets. It is base 100, which means that it can use physical and special moves equally well, just depending on its nature and its moveset. And Serene Grace is just so useful all over the place. Again, it gets great team support options. Again, it gets Stealth Rocks, it gets U-Turn, it gets Healing Wish. It also gets Future Sight, as well as the unique Doom Desire, which is a slightly more powerful Future Sight that is Steel type, which is bananas. But those moves are really underrated in draft for being able to rip a team open, because most walls can't take two really powerful hits on literally the same turn. So that's really, really good. Jirachi also gets access to screens. Jirachi gets access to setup in the form of Calm Mind, as well as defensive setup in Cosmic Power. It can recover itself with Wish. Jirachi's real good, you guys. Jirachi is very, very fucking good. It's one of those Pokemon that in draft is bigger than the sum of its parts, and I'm so excited to see the sets that we can put together with this adorable little star kid. It's going to be real good. I'm real excited to use it. So, we have our Fantasy Core locked up, but one thing that immediately struck me is our team's not fast. It's not slow either. Again, we got a base 102 in Jawsome, we got a base 100 in Starchild, but we don't have anything truly fast at this point, and that's something that I was definitely looking to correct. I considered Zeriora, right? Stupid fast. Fast like Sanic, which is only appropriate because motherfucker looks like Sanic. But, as we've already established, I want to use Mon that I have not drafted with before. We used Zeriora to great effect last season, so I didn't really want to do that. Ultimately, the Speedster that we wound up going with our number 4 pick, number 57 overall, was Hypnotic, our dear friend from Season 1, the Gengar. Now, Hypnotic is a B tier pick. Both Starchild and Hypnotic, by the way, were free picks. We'd already drafted our A in Jawsome. We had already drafted our B in Jareth. So we spent points for both of these picks, which is most of our free points, period. At this point, we have 100 points remaining, which is enough for a D and an E. So we're investing in those early, but I feel like we're getting a really good return on that investment. Gengar is a fucking monster. An absolute behemoth of the tier. For a sense of scale, Gengar is a Gen 1 Pokemon, first of all, which means that in theory its stats ought to be on the low side. But Gengar has a base 130 special attack and a base 110 speed. This is really, really good, you guys. Base 110 speed is fantastic. Admittedly, there are still a lot of fast things that outspeed base 110. There's quite a few Pokemon crowding the 115 speed tier. That includes things like Alolan Persian. That includes things like Raikou. I don't think Raikou actually was drafted at all, which is wild. But Raikou is base 115. There's a lot of stuff that fits into that speed tier, but there's a lot of stuff slower. And even if Gengar doesn't come to a given match, the fact that he can and that he's base 110 means that my opponents need to creep their speed up a little bit, which is good for me because that means they're not putting those points into bulk. So overall, it's just a win. And obviously 110 is wicked fast, particularly when paired with a Choice Scarf, which is an option I have. I have to be honest, you guys. I might not have taken Gengar here. I did a dumb. And at a glance, I took Mega Gengar's speed stat to be Gengar's speed stat, and I went, oh man, base 130. That's perfect. If I'd realized he was base 110, I might have gone with a different fast option. But I didn't, and I'm still really okay with that. Gengar is phenomenal. Gengar gets access to a great stab pairing in Shadow Ball and Sludge Bomb. Or Sludge Wave, I think, actually, which is better. Yeah, it gets both, but why would you ever not run Sludge Wave when you have access to both, right? Yeah, phenomenal dual stab is going to rip most things apart. And then, like a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon, Gengar gets bananas for coverage. Gengar gets Thunderbolt and Thunder. Gengar gets Psychic. Gengar gets Focus Blast and Energy Ball. Gengar gets Infestation if we want to trap something. Gengar gets Dazzling Gleam to hit with Fairy coverage. Just a monstrous Pokemon. Gets access to Clear Smog to remove an opponent's setup. So I can use that as an emergency oh shit button to come in on something we outspeed and clear away its setup boosts. We get Icy Wind, which gives me both ice coverage and the ability to reduce an opponent's speed, which is very good. Giga Drain, which does a little bit less than Energy Ball, but also heals. Like, there are a lot of options for Gengar. Gengar takes great advantage of all of them. It's a great substitute user. Can abuse substitute to potentially get a setup and sweep going on. Great Pokemon. We love Gengar a lot. We're really, really happy to be using him. It's also my wife's favorite Pokemon, coincidentally, so I get brownie points. So this was a win-win. Hypnotic was one of the aces of our Red, Blue, Yellow series, and we're real excited to bring him back for draft. It's going to be real good. Now, round 5. This is where things got hairy. So, round 5 is when I was intending to take my Mega. And I felt pretty good about that because almost everyone had taken a Mega already. And of those who hadn't, most of them already had strong options in the type of the Mega that we wanted. But then I realized there was one person who did not have a Mega yet and who did not have another Pokemon that would fill the same role as the Mega that we had planned on taking. And sure enough, 3 picks before our next pick, our preferred Mega gets drafted, and that was Mega Blastoise. Mega Blastoise is actually the mon that our original board was built around, because Blastoise is my favorite starter, and this was my chance to use his Mega on the big stage. And I really wanted to take it, but unfortunately, I left him to wait too long, and I paid the ultimate price for that in that I don't get to have him, which is unfortunate. And this was only, again, 3 picks before my round 5 pick, and so I had to pivot very, very quickly. But I think that I made a really, really good pivot, and I'm hoping that it works out on the season. With our round 5 pick, we took Valkyrie, the Mega Pidgeot. Now, again, this is a very different Pokemon than Mega Blastoise. We had to change up the bottom half of our draft pretty significantly to accommodate it, but I think it's a really, really good addition to the team. Mega Pidgeot is a B tier Mega, first of all, so it does not affect our points totals. We had to take a B or C at this point because an A would have left us with not enough points to finish the draft. We were always planning on taking a B, but when Blastoise went, there was no longer an option to pivot up to an A tier Mega. That was off the table for us at that point. But Valkyrie is a phenomenal value in a B tier mega. First of all, Valkyrie has a base speed of, I believe, 121. Is that right? Yes, 121 base speed, which makes it the fastest thing on the team thus far, and I'll just go ahead and say it's the fastest thing on the team, period. Now, having a Mega as your only really fast Pokemon is always risky business because your opponent can just bring Scarf against you to outspeed you, which is why Gengar is still really, really valuable here because Gengar can Scarf up and can outspeed a lot. So that makes that less of an attractive option, or again, if they're going to do that, they have to really invest in it, which is helpful. But base 121 speed is phenomenal. It lets us outspeed all of those base 115s we were talking about earlier. Mega Pidgeot has 135 base special attack, which is monstrous, as well as 80 base physical attack. So if we ever want to run something physical, like quick attack, for instance, for priority, we can hit reasonably effectively with those, which is real good. And then, so Mega Pidgeot doesn't have like wide coverage necessarily, but what coverage Mega Pidgeot has is really, really good and effective. First of all, Mega Pidgeot's ability is no guard, which means that nothing will miss it, and it cannot miss anything. Which is a little bit of a double-edged sword, but what makes it really, really good for Mega Pidge is Hurricane. Mega Pidgeot is one of the only Pokemon in the game that can reliably spam Hurricane, which is a base 110 special flying move with a 30% chance to confuse, which is apeshit, you guys. And we can click that move 100% of the time and be guaranteed that it will always hit, which is beautiful. Fantastic. Flying is one of the most spammable stab types in the game. It's a very good offensive type. Hurricane is a monster of a move. It's such a good move that with 70% accuracy, it's still almost always run on Tornadus T because it hits more often than it doesn't, and when it hits like a truck. So that's great. We also get access to Heat Wave, as most birds do for coverage, which also appreciates the fact that it will never miss from Mega Pidgeot and gives it a 95 base special fire coverage move, which is real good and covers its weaknesses very nicely. Mega Pidgeot gets access to U-Turn, allowing it to pivot very effectively. And those three moves are almost always present on Mega Pidgeot sets. Again, we don't have to run them all the time if we see an opening somewhere else, but those three moves are going to be on the majority of sets, right? Mega Pidgeot also, in its fourth move slot, gets access to a variety of utility that can be really useful in different circumstances. It is a bird, so as you might expect, it gets access to Defog to remove hazards. It gets access to Tailwind to boost the speed not only of itself, but of its entire party for 4 turns. And it gets access to Roost for recovery, each of which can be incredibly valuable in the right circumstances. It also gets access to Whirlwind to phase opponents, which Mega Pidgeot is not the bulkiest beast, so that's not as useful on Pidge as it might be on some other options, but it is an option and one we should definitely be aware of. It also gets access to Quick Attack for priority, allowing us to polish off faster foes. There's not a ton of things that are faster than Mega Pidge, but those things do exist, and having the option to finish them off from low health is really valuable. We also have access to Pursuit to potentially trap and remove threats that are threatened out by Mega Pidgeot, which is fantastic. Pidgeot's a great Pokemon here, and again, it's not the Mega that we wanted, and I do think that overall the team is probably a little bit weaker than it would have been if the board had gone entirely our way, if only because this team wasn't built to support Mega Pidge the way it was Mega Blastoise. But I think that Valkyrie is going to be an absolute monster here, and that we're going to be able to accomplish some really great things with this pickup. Now from here, I had to shuffle some things around pretty heavily to make the team work, but there were 2 Mon on the board that I really kind of needed for a variety of reasons. And the very next one that we picked up with our 6th round pick, number 89 overall, is Rotom Mo. Our boy Neutron is back. This time he is possessing a lawnmower. And this was a really solid pickup for a number of different reasons. First of all, I don't really have anything at this point in the draft that can easily switch into water type attacks. Obviously, Mega Blastoise was going to fill that role very, very well. We don't have a Mega Blastoise. We need something that can easily switch in on anticipated Scalds and Surfs. Rotom Mow accomplishes that. Rotom Mow also gives us a bulky Defogger. Valkyrie has access to Defog. Valkyrie is not nearly as fat of a hazards removal tool as Mega Blastoise would have been, and Neutron helps to fill that gap. Also, you guys know, if you've been watching draft content on the channel, you know I love me some Rotom, man. I love him all the time. It's really hard for me to build a draft team that does not include one of the forms of Rotom, and Mow just fits really well here. It threatens a variety of water types and other things, but primarily waters with his dual stab, electric and grass. It's just real good. Obviously, I have to be very, very cautious of fire type attacks, and that's something that I'm going to want to address down draft, as obviously that's a weakness that is shared by Starchild and is currently only resisted by Jawsum. But overall, I mean, Rotom gives us Will-O-Wisp, gives us Thunder Wave, gives us Defog, gives us Volt Switch, gives us Leaf Storm, ladies and gentlemen, and it's just a really great option that can run a variety of different sets and threaten in a number of different ways. Now, with our round 7 pick, I really needed synergy, and I really needed bulk. Like, right now, our only real tank on the squad is Jareth the Sylveon. Neutron is fat, but he's not a wall. So I needed a wall, and one that was going to work with the rest of the team. So in round 7, number 104 overall, we took Aggro, our glowing piece of that Radical Rock, the Gigalith. This is one of our 2 C-tier pickups, and it gives us such great value. Gigalith's defensive stats are absolutely bananas. Actually, Gigalith's stats, other than speed, are absolutely bananas. Gigalith has 130 base physical defense. 130 base physical defense. 135 base attack, which is bananas. And you might be looking at it and go, okay, well, it's only got 80 Spadef. That's not too great. It's also a rock type, which means that its Spadef gets doubled in the sand. And guess what? It gets Sandstream, which means that this thing is easily the best mixed wall on the team. It just eats hits. It just eats them. It doesn't give a fuck. It just takes the hits. It's another stealth rock setter, so our 3rd rocks option on the team. And it gets access to a variety of useful moves. It gets Explosion if it wants to go out with a bang. It gets Stone Edge for a monstrously hard-hitting stab attack. It gets access to Earthquake for coverage. It gets access to... It gets access to other stuff. I'm just having a brain fart moment. I apologize. Oh, it gets access to Heavy Slam, which is phenomenal given that it's a fat fuck and it weighs a lot. It gets access to Curse, which is a great setup option if we can find an opportunity to set up, given how slow it already is. It gets Superpower and Throat Chop for coverage, which is phenomenal. It gets Iron Head for coverage. This is a great Pokemon, you guys. And it can do so much on this team. Sand is such a great addition to this team. It benefits Garchomp. Garchomp can run Sand Veil, and so Gigalith can then give it Evasion with Sand. It more passively benefits Jirachi in that it hurts the other things on the field, but it doesn't hurt Rachi itself when it's out, and that's phenomenal. And then obviously it's a huge benefit to itself, the Sand. So that's just great. It's just real good, you guys. Its one real failing as a tank, as a wall, is that it lacks reliable self-recovery. And you might be thinking, well, that's a problem. Wouldn't something with Regenerator have been better? And in some ways, like, yeah. But, very important, we've also got Jareth the Sylveon and Starchild the Jirachi who can use Wish. So we have options to reliably pass health back into aggro, which is great. Aggro can run lefties for additional recovery. Aggro can also run Assault Vest for additional Spadef if he just wants to be the fattest thing that's ever lived, especially. Aggro can run all sorts of shit. Can run Smooth Rock to extend the length of sand. Just this is just a great Pokemon, you guys, and one that fits so well. And I'm really excited to bring this type of synergy to the table here. Now, I got a couple of picks left at this point, you guys. I've got a second C tier pick. I've got one D tier pick from points, a D tier free pick, and I have two E tier picks remaining. So we're nearing the bottom of the barrel, and I've definitely still got some pretty major holes on the draft checklist that I need to check off. I have no fire type. I have no water type, which is somewhat concerning at this point in the draft. I have no dark type, and yeah, these are problems, and they're problems that need to be answered. And so the first answer that we come to in round 8 is for a fire type, and we bring the BBR mascot pick. We pick up our boy Blaziken out of the D tier on points. And I'm really excited for this pickup, you guys. Blaziken is not my favorite starter, not even my favorite fire starter, if I'm being honest. But Blaziken fits on this team so well. He's a fire type that is not weak to rock, which is always a really, really good thing. There's a reason that firefighting has been a starter type for so often, and it's just very good. Blaziken has access to incredibly potent dual stab with high jump kick as well as flare blitz. Like, it just hits like a fucking monster truck. And then it can also, with its stats, like its special attack is sky high as well. It can easily run specially offensive. Blaziken's downfall, right? Blaziken's shortcoming is in its speed. Like, this would be an absolutely top tier Pokemon if it was not sitting on a base 80 speed tier. But Choice Scarf exists, first and foremost. We can run him Scarfed. He's also got access to both agility and swords dance. So he can double dance, potentially, as long as I can find him the right opportunity to do so. He has access to Flame Charge, which is a favorite strategy of mine to set up a single stage of speed. He definitely has the tools to make up for that. And he has great coverage. He gets access to Brave Bird. He gets access to Earthquake. He gets access to Will-O-Wisp. He can also burn things, as we previously discussed. Gets Stone Edge. Gets Poison Jab. This is a really great Pokemon, you guys. One that I think is going to do really, really good things here on the team. Ironically, Blaziken can also defog, so that is another option for removing hazards on the team. Not one that I think that maybe we'll ever utilize necessarily, but it's an option that we have, and it's good to have options, you guys. We're happy to have those. Now, at this point, we have 3 picks remaining. Feeling really good about the team we built. One of those is a C tier pick, which is easily our highest profile pick left. Although we definitely want to get good value out of the lower picks as well. Round 9, number 136 overall, we completed our Fire, Water, Grass core with our boy Chocodile, the man, the myth, the legend, number 136 in the draft. That is our final C tier pick, and Chocodile kind of brings it together in a lot of ways. First of all, it finally gives us that water that we've been lacking. And I want to say bulky water. Chocodile is not the bulkiest water type in existence, but it's still fairly fat physically, which is important because a lot of our defense on this team is special. So the fact that Chocodile is able to absorb physical hits better is actually a positive thing. It's a benefit. But Chocodile brings us a couple of things that we were missing, that we were really feeling the lack of. For one thing, we've got a couple of setup options, but we don't have anything that's going to reliably set up speed. Obviously, Sriracha can under the right circumstances, but that's far from like a foolproof strategy with Blaziken. For Alligator gets Dragon Dance, which Dragon Dance is phenomenal, one of the best setup moves in Pokemon, period. And for Alligator is a monster at abusing it. Has 2 great abilities in what is most often used in Sheer Force, which allows a lot of its moves, including Liquidation, including Rock Slide, I believe. I believe Feraligatr gets Rock Slide, right? Definitely Ice Fang. Definitely Crunch. You get Rock Slide? Yep, including Rock Slide. Allows all those moves to hit like noticeably harder with Sheer Force, which is very, very good. Or for that matter, it also gets Torrent, which is an easy ability to overlook. As a matter of fact, I got swept last season by Peg running a Focus Sash Torrent setup for Alligator. I believe it was Focus Sash, fucking Dragon Dance, Torrent, and then just Aqua Jetted me to death. It does get Aqua Jet, which makes Chocodile by far our most reliable priority user on the team. Again, we established we have Quick Attack on Valkyrie, and I believe on Jareth as well. But Chocodile's Aqua Jet is by far our most threatening option for priority at this point, which is a good thing to have. And also, I mean, it gets some other like good options, like good team support options. Chocodile gets access to Roar, so that's always like a helpful thing to have. It does get Swords Dance, so if speed is ever not a concern, like if we just are straight like we're going to sweep with Aqua Jet here with priority, we don't need speed. We can just set up 2 stages of attack with Swords Dance, and it's a really strong option. It's also worth remembering that Chocodile is a starter, and starters are generally built to be able to use both attacking stats to some degree. And as such, Chocodile has a base 79 special attack, which is not great, but good enough to be usable if a certain special coverage move is just really appealing in a given matchup. If we decide we want to run Scald, for instance, to fish for burns, like that's a valid option for Alligator that it might not be for some other physical water type mon. So it's really good. I feel like this is certainly at this point in the draft, this is the best possible completion we could have made to our Fire, Water, Grass core, and we're really excited to bring Chocodile onto the squad. At this point, we have 2 picks remaining, and they're both E-tier picks, which are probably the least impactful picks in draft, but we do want to make sure we get good value out of those. Because if you take E-tiers that aren't usable, then what are you even doing? Like, if you'll remember, we took Rotom Fan last draft, and he was one of our most valuable Mon out of the E tier. So there's definitely value there. You just got to find it. And I think we did a really good job of finding value in E in this draft. With our round 10 pick out of the E tier, 153 overall, we took Wartortle. Took Bismarck, the Wartortle. And I feel really, really good about this pickup, you guys. Again, I had intended to run Mega Blastoise. That option was taken from me. And we get a lot of the same utility out of Bismarck, which is bananas, but it's true. Bismarck gives us a Rapid Spin option, a value low-tier Rapid Spin. Bismarck has great coverage, gets access to, obviously, Scald, gets access to Ice Beam, gets access to Aura Sphere. I don't think Wartortle gets access to Dark Pulse like Blastoise does. I think that's a move that it only gets when fully evolved. Yep, that appears to be correct. So we do not get Dark Pulse, which is a little unfortunate, but we do get Dragon Pulse. We get Fake Out, we get Yawn, we get Aqua Jet here as well. We get Haze. So a lot of really powerful, potent options. And it's worth remembering, guys, that Eviolite is a thing. For scale, Wartortle has base 80 defense and special defense, which means with Eviolite, those become base 120. Like, Wartortle is a valid tank, which is bananas, but it's absolutely fucking true. So yeah, there's a lot of value here, and I think Wartortle gives us a really, really solid value in an E-tier pickup. Obviously, would it be better to have Mega Blastoise? Yeah, absolutely. But it gives us another strong, bulky hazard removing option. I no longer feel nervous about our ability to remove hazards with the addition of Wartortle. And Wartortle does a lot of really cool and interesting things on the team. It attains, again, that really good SPDEF without having to sacrifice utility options with Assault Vest. And just in general, I think that Bismarck is going to be a really solid addition to the team. Like, this is an E tier that's going to come to some matches. Is it going to come every week? No, almost certainly not. But it's going to see use, which is really, if your E tiers aren't going to see use, you're drafting them wrong. Now, last, our final pick on the draft, I wanted to accomplish a couple of different things. We still had no dark type, which means that I wanted a dark type on the roster, because you don't want someone to know that they can just come into a match, choice spec Psychic, and click Psychic, and there's not much you can do. Obviously, Star Child Quad resists it, so that makes that a less attractive option against me regardless, but just having an immunity is really, really good to discourage things, and we definitely wanted that somewhere on our roster. I really, at this point, only have one Mon that wants to switch into water attacks and can threaten in return. Obviously, Chocodile can switch in, and so can Bismarck, but they don't really have much to threaten their fellow bulky waters. Only Neutron can really do that. So with that in mind, for our final round 11 pick, 168 overall, we took Desperado, our boy from Adventures. Well, Tanner's boy from Adventures, but I voice him, goddammit, so kind of my boy as well. I got Desperado the Cacturn, and this is a really cool pick on this team. It synergizes on multiple levels, and I think that it works really, really well. First of all, Cacturn has access to 2 abilities, both of which are really, really useful for me. Cacturn gets Water Absorb, which means that it can switch for free into Water-type attacks. That means that this Pokemon brings 2 immunities to the table, both immunities that I needed, and again, it was really going to give pause to powerful water things, as far as just like being like, well, I'm just going to specs into Hydro Pump. Well, I just bring Cacturn out. What are you going to do? So that's really, really good. Cacturn's other ability, however, is almost as good on my team, and that is Sand Veil, which means that it's got the same sand-abusing ability as Jawsome, our Garchomp. It can boost its evasion in the sand, which is good. It's more good, though, because it also, Grass and Dark are types that are not immune to Sandstorm damage, and so normally, if Desperado comes out in my sand, Desperado's taking damage. If Desperado is Sand Veil, he's also immune to Sandstorm damage. So it works on multiple levels, and I'm really, really glad for it. Cacturn, surprisingly, actually also boasts really decent attacking stats and really good coverage. It's held back by its speed, first of all. Like, just throwing that out there. It's only base 55 speed, and that hurts it, particularly with its low defenses. But that being said, it's got base 110 in both of its attacking stats. It gets access to Sucker Punch, giving us a really good option for Dark-type stab priority, which is very good. He gets access to things like Brick Break and Energy Ball and Seed Bomb for dual-type Grass Stab. It gets access to Poison Jab, gets access to Dark Pulse, Low Kick, Dynamic Punch, Fell Stinger if we want to set up, or Power Up Punch for that matter, for similar purposes. Gets Thunder Punch, gets Superpower, Foul Play, Drain Punch, Stomping Tantrum. Cacturn gets a lot of options, and I'm really, really excited to see what ways we can find to fit it on different sets and make it work. From a support standpoint, it gets access to the not exclusive, but very limited Spiky Shield for protection and a little bit of chip damage, which is helpful. Gets access to Destiny Bond, gets access to Leech Seed, and gets access to Spikes. So with our final pick on the draft, one of our E-tier picks, we were also able to pick up a Spikes option, which is really, really helpful. So all in all, I don't think that Cacturn is an amazing Pokemon, and it's going to be difficult to use, but I think that it has a genuine niche and brings genuine value to this team. And so for those reasons, I'm really, really excited to have it, and I think that it was a really good pickup here. So that is our draft, you guys. That is our team of 11 Pokemon. I think that we can combine them in some really interesting ways to do some big damage to our opponents. But I do want to take a few minutes to talk about those opponents, because as we previously mentioned, this draft has a division system. So we are in the Sun Conference Kalos division. We play each of the other 3 teams in SC Kalos twice this season, and we are directly competing against them for a division championship and a guaranteed trip to the playoffs. So those 6 matches are quite possibly our most important on the season. We really, really want to win those. So let's take a moment to talk about the three teams that we share the SC Kalos division with and what they drafted. First up, we have Claude 9, longstanding member of the Puckle podcast community, and his Republic City Firefirds. Now, Claude is an absolute monster. He is a former Puckle draft champion. He's also one of the commissioners over there, and Claude actually assisted both Professor Snag as well as Michael of Pokemon Rollout in Uppel. So I got to see his team building skills firsthand, and they are monstrous. So definitely something that we want to be aware of coming in. And boy, Claude has managed to put together one hell of a monster of a team. Claude has drafted Mega Scizor, Tapu Koko, Hawlucha, Kyurem, Crocodile, Chandelure, Roserade, Silvally, Seismitoad, Mesprit, and Audino. So this is a really, really powerful team. I really appreciate the way that Claude neglected the higher tiers and got almost all of his value out of C, but made sure that the things that he did get out of the high tiers, his Mega, his A, his B, are absolutely top tier threats. Mega Scizor is a fucking monster. Obviously, it has a quad weakness, which is something that we could potentially exploit. And it's a Mega, so it also cannot run an Akka Berry to mitigate that, which is helpful, but it's also a defensive behemoth, so we can't ever be too confident. Like, we're going to have to make sure that if we're trying to surprise and one-hit KO it with fire coverage, that we run that careful and we make sure we can actually one-hit KO that boy. Tapu Koko is one of the best Pokemon, period. It's one of the best Pokemon. And combined with Hawlucha, it forms an offensive core that is a staple of the OU metagame. Here in Draft, where we have much fewer options to counter it, we're going to have to be very, very careful playing around that Koko Lucha, particularly since we have to do it twice this season. We have to play Tapu Koko 3 times this season, 2 matches against Claude, and 1 against Sparky and his Thundurus from Down Under Us, the team in the Moon Conference that drafted Tapu Koko. So, fuck my life, but that's where we're at. We have to play Koko 3 times. We're going to have to get real good at beating this boy. Kyurem is a really, really solid value, like, offensive pick in C. It's something that you can never, like, take for granted. I like our matchup there in that we have Sylveon, which can pixelate Hyper Voice and hit behind Substitute. Sub Kyurem is a very common strategy, and for good reason. It's very, very good, but we counter Sub Kyurem very well. So I don't think we'll see a lot of Kyurem in our head-to-head matches, or if we do, I don't expect to see a lot of the Substitute set, just because we have an easy answer to beat it, which is less than ideal for Claude, obviously. I really like the Silvally pickup here. Silvally is a monstrous Pokemon with a lot of different options that is very, very difficult to prep for. Roserade, also a very good pickup here. We ran Roserade for a little bit in Season 1 of the BBL. We wound up releasing it, not because Roserade was bad, but just because we had too many things. We had nothing that could switch into an Earthquake, and so we kind of needed a Grass type that could switch in on Ground type moves, which Roserade really can't comfortably. But Technician Hidden Power is monstrous. And so, yeah, there's a lot of offensive threats here that we are definitely going to have to be aware of. And between options like Mesprit and Sylvally, there are a lot of things that can just fill a lot of roles that we have to be aware of. So Claude is definitely a threat and an opponent to watch out for. However, that's true of our entire division. Not to throw shade at anybody else, I think we have the hardest division in this whole league. It's going to be really interesting to see who wins week to week. The second team in the SC Kalos division is our good buddy Roger M and his Porygon 2 in the Electric Boogaloo. This is, I believe, Roger's first draft, certainly his first draft in our circle, but he has put together a really, really threatening team. Opting to go for Mega Steelix, which is interesting. Mega Steelix is a very good Pokemon, but it is a C-tier Mega, which has allowed Roger to invest more heavily into the higher tiers of his draft, and I think he's done so to great effect. Picking up Zygarde 50%, Mew, and Alolan Ninetales out of A and B, which is a monstrous combination. Either Zygarde or Mew behind Aurora Veil is game over, frankly. Giving either of those a really free opportunity to set up is a problem, is a big problem. I love the Alolan Ninetales pickup. I always love the Alolan Ninetales pickup. It's, in my opinion, one of the best high-value mon in draft. Its dual stab is fantastic. Its access to Aurora Veil obviously sets it apart, and its access to Freeze Dry is really, really good. There's a lot of mon that have very few weaknesses that are suddenly quad weak to Freeze Dry, so that's very, very good. Roger also picked up Cloyster, which is a top tier setup threat alongside Venomoth. Either of those mon can just set up and end your whole day. This is a very offensive team, but it is backed by some really solid defensive options, including the aforementioned Mega Steelix and Umbreon, which I really like the combination of Mega Steelix and Umbreon. Obviously, they share a big weakness in fighting, but with that being said, Mega Steelix's defensive stats are monstrous on the physical side. Umbreon has more special defense, allowing them to complement each other there. And then Umbreon is again an evolution with Clericking abilities and the ability to pass wishes into Mega Steelix, which Steelix really, really appreciates as it lacks any reliable recovery outside of rest. Tornadus is a really good value in C tier, so that was a great pickup. Yeah, great value all the way down the draft. I'm really excited to see what Roger can make happen with this team. I'm also really excited to see who his kill leader winds up being. Again, I used the setup Mew in UPPL Season 1 with our champion team, and it's a really, really threatening setup mon, but so is Zygarde, so is Cloyster, so is Venomoth, so is Steelix if done right. So I'm really interested to see who winds up putting in work week to week on this team. Now, our final division rival is our good friend youngster Timmy and his Death Valley Heatrans. Timmy is, of course, our good buddy Pat's younger brother. He assisted Pat in last season's Blastburn Radio Draft League, and he's also coached in Pat's Draft League, which is, I believe, the ADA. Excuse me if I got that name wrong, fellas. But this is not his first go-round in draft, although this is his first time as a full-fledged coach in the Blastburn Radio Draft. And he has, again, managed to put together a really, really threatening team. Starting with Mega Venusaur, which is a monster of a wall, and combining it with Heatran to make a really, really potent defensive core that doesn't share much, if anything, in the way of weaknesses. Along with Primarina, that is a really, really solid Firewater Grass. Not a lot of speed right there, but overall, like, really, really solid. As far as a Firewater Grass core, and 2/3 of a Fantasy core, completing that Fantasy core with Haxorus, which is a monster of a setup sweeper that can pretty much click the button and win at any point in the match. Speaking of monster setup sweepers, you have Lucario, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the speediest option on this team. Electivire might edge it out, and obviously there are some other options that can set up speed. But I'm pretty sure Lucario is the fastest thing straight out the box. And it is a great unpredictable mon who can set up both physically and specially, and has the attack stats on each side to really support that. I really like the Slurpuff pickup here. I used Slurpuff just a little bit at the tail end of last season, and it's such a valuable mon. It can run bulky and supportive with Clericking abilities and sticky webs. It can run ham full offense with Belly Drum. And Unburden, making it super duper fast. It's just a really, really good option. And again, it's going to be really interesting to see what Timmy does with it week to week. Honchkrow brings a lot to this team, I think. It ticks off a lot of boxes, giving Timmy a grounded poison, giving him a grounded type to immune out electrics, giving him toxic spikes, as well as just really great breadth of coverage. It's a really good pickup. And I think Tim did a really good job in finding value in his low-tier picks, getting a potent dark type in Honchkrow. Oh, my dear Slickback, I'm so sorry. With really great priority and phenomenal attacking stats. Getting Mismagius, who can run bulky or offensive and excel in both roles. Electivire, who's a really undervalued and underutilized mon with really great coverage. And of course, Avalugg in E, who is, in my opinion, one of the better E tiers. With monstrous physical defense. One thing you can be certain of is, like, people are going to have to prep for Avalugg, which is an E tier, which is bananas. But, like, you can't You can't just run like a team full of physical attackers with an Avalugg on your opponent's roster. You can't do it, even if they're super effective. It doesn't matter. That Avalugg will find a way to win, and it's bad. This is a really threatening team. I feel like Timmy has maybe a little bit more to prove at this point than some of our other competitors. Although, I don't know, Roger's never competed in our league before, so maybe that's not a fair statement. But I don't really know what to expect from Tim or Roger, really, as battlers. But from a drafting standpoint, they have both put together a phenomenal top-tier board, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with it. But yeah, that is the draft, guys. Again, I feel really strongly that we built a really potentially successful team here. I see Jossum getting a lot of kills this season. I see Valkyrie getting a lot of KOs. I see Hypnotic getting a lot of KOs. I'm probably going to get some sweeps with Jirachi, get some sweeps with Chocodile. They're both very capable of it. I'm really excited to use it. As of me recording this, our first match, our week 1 match, is scheduled to be fought tonight, and we'll be getting the video of that up on the channel as soon as possible. This is really like our first big push into the YouTube space, guys, so be sure to show some love. Subscribe, hit that like button, turn on notifications, all that good jazz. Leave us a comment. You guys have been telling us for a while that you want to see us making content for YouTube. We want to make content for YouTube. This is us doing that. Now be sure to support that and show it some love with all of the things that YouTube does. But yeah, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you so much for joining us as we recapped our draft. And I'll be back real soon, actually, recapping the entire drafts for all 16 teams of each conference. So be real excited for that. But that's going to be it for now, guys. As always, I have been Jolly by Nature. Thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next time.